share experience with my fellow engineers I gave at Harvard University. We start with that, and I think my presentation will take about like, I'll try to finish. I have 15 slides, but I will finish it in about 15 minutes, and then we can go to Q&A. Does that sound good?
Sounds great. Thank you.
Sounds great. Thank you. And just to give you a bit of background information regarding our team, while we are putting the slides on.
Our students are from Addis Ababa University and Addis Ababa Science and Technology University. They are coming from different departments, engineering, electrical engineering, computer software engineering. And the ones that are currently in part of the program, they are going to have the camp by next month. Currently, they are in the project phase. They are building MVPs, getting experience of field of problem solving and development. And next month, they are going to the camp. For interview preparation. By October 15th, they will be ready for interviews with public companies.
That's great. When I heard about this program, I was very happy. Can you guys still hear me? The screen is, I think, having some.
Yes, we can see it.
You can see it. Okay. Let me make sure my Wi-Fi doesn't go out. Okay, so today what I will be talking about is trends in software development. So the agenda would be, I would be talking about a short introduction about myself and just touch on a few trends I'm observing in the industry around software development. I will talk about cloud computing, AI, and machine learning. And I will give two cases from a previous employer I worked at, Tableau, and a new app I just published in the marketplace called Amharic. The whole for an internship program at Microsoft. So I joined as an intern in the Windows Phone division. So I went to do my internship there at Microsoft, and on how to prepare for coding interview. I'm glad that you guys are working on your coding skills and you're preparing yourself for success. And so after my internship is done, I joined Microsoft as a full-time on the app platform. So when you submit your apps to Microsoft Store, that was my team. Automating. And in 2013, I changed the company and I joined a company called Tableau. Tableau is a data analytics company whose vision is to help people see and understand data. So it makes it easy for you to make dashboards and visualizations. And recently, in December 2021, I joined a company called Databricks. It's based in San Francisco. Part of there, they have offices in Seattle. So that's where I work on a remote office there. So the first thing I would like to talk about development, has been following on a waterfall model where you gather a requirement, you design, you implement, and you test your software, and then you do deployment, you distribute your software. When we learn software engineering, we learn how to gather requirements, how to design our software. cycle where you got the requirement. Things move very fast using an agile model. So a quick iteration, being able to prototype something and show to a quick feedback loop. And also a lot of trends around hosting your software were impacting this, because if you can quickly develop something and distribute it without really incurring a lot of cost, that was very useful.
Policy in AWS for Azure or GCP, and it's a subscription fee. You don't pay for a license fee. You pay per month per user or per usage. So that change is really
to install it or have a software with you. The other big thing that's happening is around data. If you are trying to build a software company and you don't have a good data strategy, you're not going to survive. Ethiopia, like us to see ride share companies, right? That those companies, all they do is data, right? They connect people who are looking for a ride with the people that could do the ride or provide their vehicle for service. Right, so able to quickly provide build application on top of these data that have are all based on data, right? The top companies in the world are based on data. So you know, when you think about the future, about your career, you have to think about what kind of companies are you joining. Are you joining companies that have good strategy around data, or are you joining companies who have not such a strong strategy around data? The other thing that's another trend that obviously you guys are familiar with is AI and machine learning is taking over, right? It used to be that most of the things we do in software were manual, right? A lot of development and analysis and testing we do were manual. But these days, majority of the repetitive tasks are being taken care of by some kind of machine learning and AI. And this is great whenever you have some repetitive task, maybe something that is very laborious for a person to do. Machine learning and AI is a great way to do it. And so with this big data push and the cost of cloud computing dropping is making it easy for companies to be able to develop some machine learning model and be able to deploy it for some task. At the end of my presentation, I will be providing a case study that I have worked on around AI and machine learning that could help you provide you some kind of inspiration. So with that, what is in general happening is that the way you develop and prepare your software is changing, right? So you work in an area where you prepare your data and you build some model. You could you develop machine learning models using your Visual Studio Code. You could deploy it. You can train your model and deploy your model for consumption, right? What this means is that once you have ability to collect that data, let's say we are developing a model that helps us understand human speech. What that means is that you have to collect a lot of data for human speech and be able to train a model. Training a model means to take the machine learning model that is already developed for you, but provide with new data so that it can understand how you can make decision on the input that you provided it. So once you have trained your model and you feel comfortable with it, you can deploy it into a cloud infrastructure. Later, I will provide more detail on how I have done it for an application I worked on. So in summary, things used to be waterfall, which means we have this like slow development cycle. We gather requirement, design, and deploy software. But now things are being more agile. On-prem hardware. On-prem means on-premises hardware, which is like you install your software on someone's machine. With software now, things are on the cloud. Most of the desktop applications are being replaced by web applications because that way you can deploy things to the cloud first. Perpetual license, which means you buy a software for 5-10 years, are getting replaced by subscription-based model where you pay only for what you use. And what that means is that as a software company, you have to be very strong at keeping your clients, because if your software doesn't meet the requirement of your customers are going to leave you and go somewhere. If I don't like the ride company, the ride car company, I go to Forest, right? Or I go to like there's nothing keeping me there there's nothing forcing me. I have alternatives, right? So there's what subscription model mean. Desktop applications are getting replaced with mobile and web applications, as you already are familiar with. And things that are statically programmed, things that are repetitive, that are being programmed manually, are being replaced to a machine learning model or smart way of doing things. The first case study I will be talking about today would be a software I worked on at a company called Tableau. This software allows you to analyze and visualize your data. So what you were doing here is that, let's say you have a lot of data from multiple sources, right? So without writing code, we created this software to allow you create and join your data from multiple sources and create what we call a DAG, a direct acyclic graph, which allow you to represent the kind of transformation you do in a graph. Let's say you have a data that is in a CSV format from one source, and maybe you have a database. Maybe you have an access file. You can join and you can prepare it for you to be able to make decisions on it, right? So this is a software that I worked on, and the team was pretty large. It was about 60 developers that worked on this. My responsibility was mainly working on the backend. The visual part that you see in this presentation is not what I owned. I own the backend components of this app. Just to tell you how this app was developed, it was a desktop app first. So we used a framework called React Electron. Electron is I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a way for you to write a desktop application using web technology, right? That way you can take your web app and host it in an Electron browser as if it's a desktop application. It's written in React and it's written in JavaScript and TypeScript. And the main reason we did this was to make it easy for us to move this application to the web. We want to make sure that this application also works on the web browser without any need to install the software. It was developed by the UI part of it was developed by web developers. So if some of you are looking to be a web developer, there's a lot of opportunity around. If you are really good developer on web, like if you understand a lot of good web technologies, there's a lot of opportunities. Actually, one of our challenges at Databricks is finding really good web developers, right? Everybody can claim that they can write JavaScript, right? If I look at most of your resumes, I don't know how many people here we have, but like majority of you are going to say you write JavaScript, and I say I know JavaScript. It's an easy language, but it's really hard to be really good at it. That's one of the things to keep an eye on, is like being a really good UI developer is really hard. So the backend, I talked about the UI part. The backend of this component is what I worked on. It is written in Java. The main front end application is written in Java. The REST API is written in Java. We use a framework called Spring. It's a way for you to be able to host a REST API using Java. And what this application does is, like, if you can see here, the application generates a SQL query, right? At the end of the day, you are joining two tables using some join criteria, right? What this application, but the user doesn't do that. The user doesn't write any SQL script. We do that for them. So this Java layer generates what we call a SQL query, the user input, and then we run that on a database. And if you if your web app connects to multiple databases, we join that and generate a result and return it to the application. So that's the high-level view of the Tableau prep server. The second one that I'm going to we'll be talking about is a new application called Amharic Voice Translator. I developed this application, I think, 3-4 months ago. The goal any language into Amharic voice. If you go to Google Translate today and type some Amharic or English to Amharic, Google Translate will translate that to Amharic, but it will not be able to speak that for you. Like there will not be any voice. You cannot click the voice icon and hear the Amharic voice. That's the problem I wanted to solve, because I was bringing my 4 kids from USA to Ethiopia, and I want them to talk to them, right? Like I want them to say, hey, I need food in English, and the app should translate that and say, ምግብ እፈልጋለሁ in Amharic, right? That's the goal of this application. So you can choose from any language you want. You can download it from the Play Store or the iPhone App Store. And what it does is it takes this text that you have recorded in English or written in text and translate it using Google Translate API. I use the Google Translate API, translate that voice, and then I developed this text-to-speech model. So to do that, I actually hired people on Upwork. I went and found some engineers who live in Ethiopia, and I think I paid about $150 or $200 to be able basically to take a 30-minute voice text speech and chop it down into 3-second segments so that I can use that to try to train the Amharic model. So it was a Amharic text and Amharic voice from the Amharic Bible that I used to train this model. And then once that model is trained, I deployed it on GCP, the Google Cloud, using something called Google Cloud Run. And that model was deployed, and I have a REST API, and this app will talk to that REST API. So it's a free app. You can go try it out and let me know if you like it. So final takeaway. This is going to be my last slide, I think. Yeah. So, if you are going to be in the industry looking for a job, learn JavaScript. That should not be the only thing you should learn about, but if you have aspirations to be working on a web applications, web-based solutions, learning JavaScript, especially if you want to specialize in UI, is very useful. It used to be the case 10 years ago that JavaScript was frowned upon. Like if you know JavaScript, nobody wants to talk to you. Nobody wants to learn JavaScript. But we have learned over the last 10 years that you can build very impressive UI technologies like React and Redux that allow you to make very responsive, fast applications using JavaScript. If you want to get into the backend, if you want to learn how to develop backend applications, backend systems, like learning cloud computing technology is very relevant. Learning how AWS works, like learning how you can develop and host applications using that expose REST API or gRPC or many different web technologies is a good way to learn and be a backend developer. Finally, getting the basic understanding on how AI and machine learning works is a great way for you to develop your skills and make sure you are a very marketable person. Right? So in the industry today, there's a very high demand for skilled AI and machine learning experts. And so that's one of the things you could look into in the future and say, hey, this is an area I want to be able to grow and develop. Right. So these are the things I would recommend that anybody in the industry be looking at. I cannot claim to be a JavaScript expert or a machine learning expert. I specialize mainly around cloud computing and backend technology, but I also spend some time and develop some JavaScript applications on my spare time. Like that's what I do on my spare time, just to make sure that I'm up to. So that's all I had from my presentation. So I don't know. Up to you. What's next?
Thank you very much. I think we can start getting the questions regarding the presentation. Tim, if you have a question, please write in the chat window. and then we are going to give you voice. And Bemnet, actually, I have a question regarding your last role. So what are you doing at Databricks?
Good question. Yeah, I didn't talk about Databricks a lot because this presentation was prepared before Databricks. At Databricks, I'm working on a team called Partner Platform, and so I lead few engineers, currently 3 backend engineers, working on a new product that's called the Databricks Marketplace. And so that's my current role. Before that, I worked on a part of the product called Partner Connect, and the idea of that product is to let Databricks is a data analysis tool. So if you know Jupyter notebooks, if you know how to write JavaScript or Python code to analyze large data, Databricks makes that easy. They provide a very easy to deploy Spark instances, and you can run Spark without needing to manage the infrastructure. So they make it easy for you to deploy a lot of the backend components you need for machine learning. And so what my team does is it makes it easy for partners, other people who want to use Databricks outside Databricks easier. So instead of manually copying connection strings in JDBC and say, hey, I want to connect my Databricks account to a Google account, Tran account, or other data providers, and that way you can connect multiple products together and have a single place where you can manage your data.
And that is actually very important for especially like mid to large size companies, because they are already working multiple data sources, and not having all the data in one place is a big trouble. Very cool. Yep. All right, so we had a question from Sefine, and I think the question is more about like, what would you recommend? Let's say if you were in our shoes, we know that machine learning is very important, but we don't know how to start preparing and where to find the resources. So for the beginners, what steps would you recommend?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like I said, I'm not an expert in machine learning, but I can tell you what I did for me to know and learn a little bit about machine learning. So what I did is I basically signed up for a course on Coursera, website called Coursera, and I took the machine learning 101. I think it was a professor from Berkeley that was giving that course, and I think it's free if you don't want to get the certificates. The Coursera courses are great, and the reason that's reading the book is because they give you exercises in the course. They give you assignments and challenge that you have to use because it's more practical thing to do. So I'd recommend like starting the course on Coursera and starting your machine learning journey from a course online, and then do more reading using books.
Thank you. And Bemnet, life has many ups and downs. So what were the hardest moments you faced in your career, and how did you overcome them?
That's a great question. I think the hardest thing for me was the lack of mentorship, honestly. Like, because when I went to Sweden from Bardar, I have no idea what to expect. I have no idea. I didn't have a career goal. Like, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to go do an internship and like do that. I didn't have that vision, and I didn't have anyone I could draw inspiration from that looks like me. And so one thing I knew though was I wanted to learn JavaScript. I wanted to learn Java. Like, Java was my favorite language back in school, and I wanted to take the Java certification. Like because it was not provided in Ethiopia, I had to wait until I went to Sweden. And during my Christmas break, my certification. And after that, I was able to apply for an internship program at Microsoft. And so the hardest thing for me was When I went to the interview, I actually did the interview through a phone interview first, and then they flew us to London from Sweden to do the physical interview. And the thing is that I didn't know what tech interviews were. I thought I was someone who was from HR or human resource management was going to ask me. I thought it was a behavioral question, so I was not prepared to answer technical questions. And what they did is it just gave me a big whiteboard and asked me to write code. Like I was not prepared for that. So when I went there, a lot of people came from all over the country, like from many European countries, come to London for, and everybody was super prepared. Some of them even have business cards with their website and profiles. And like I was feeling so unbelonging, right? Like so that was a very hard moment, and I didn't make it. Like I actually failed the interview. And then 2 weeks later, someone else, like from Microsoft, contacted me and said, "We're still interested in you. We want to do another interview with you." And then that second interview is what I did, and I got the internship. So I almost didn't get that opportunity to go to Microsoft. So if you ask me what was the hardest thing, um, it was not having a mentor, someone I could ask, someone actually I want to talk to, and that's why I'm super passionate about what you guys are doing here, and that's what I do in Seattle as well. I go and teach a lot of kids. I have about 80 students, medium and high school students, that I teach coding on my spare time, and so I think that's a great way to help the future generation.
That's an excellent point, and I wholeheartedly agree. Very happy to hear that your efforts in Seattle and training new generations of coders. Very cool. So, Bemnet, obviously now you have a lot more experience about how tech interviews look like. And what would you recommend for our teammates? How did you prepare, and how do you recommend them to prepare?
That's a great question. So to be honest, like just so you guys understand, there is no right way of preparing an interview. Me, even after 15 years of experience, when I switched jobs at Databricks, I had to take 4 weeks break to prepare for interviews. Right? Tech interviews are not going to be measuring how smart you are. Right? They are not going to help you or tell you whether you are going to be a successful engineer or not. What all it does is measure how hard you can study, I guess. And so don't just to say like the truth. I interviewed 5 companies when I decided to change a company after 8 years of Tableau. When I switched to Databricks, I interviewed at 5 places. Out of the 5 places, I only got over from 3 of them. I got no from 2 places. Those 2 places actually were places I thought like I did really good. Like I answered most of the design questions and all that. So first of all, like what I want to say is like there's no great way to prepare for an interview. There's no if you fail the interview, it's not probably it's not your fault. It's probably you didn't hear the question before, or the interviewer was not being clear, or there was some communication gap. That said, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, we have to prepare for interviews. If you want to apply for big tech companies, you have to prepare for interview. And so the best way to do that is, first of all, like I'm sure you guys are familiar with the platforms like LeetCode, and there are a lot of websites you could go and practice these basic algorithms and data structure questions. Those are great, and I use them as well. There is a book about, there is an interview, a very green book, questions or something like. I could find the title. You probably are familiar with that as well. Those are great resources to help you, prepare. But most of that is not going to help you get the foundationals, right? So before you start targeting to interview questions, you should have a basic foundation about data structure and algorithm, right? If you don't understand how a queue works, or if you don't have a good understanding on basic sorting algorithms, on why those algorithms exist, what the big O notation is, or some of the fundamentals computer science principles are, it's going to be really hard to have that discussion with your interviewer as well, right? So first thing I would recommend is focus on your basic computer science skills, and then use this other resource. Yeah, someone said cracking the coding interview. That's the book. Those books will help you prepare, right? They will help you, increase your confidence, right? So all preparation give you is increase your confidence. It's not going to help you land a job, because if you don't have the basic foundational principles on how computer science works, then preparing for interviews is not going to be the solution. So first, focus on basic principles. If you, for example, if in your school you didn't have a good foundation about computer science, data structure and algorithm, go take a course in Coursera, apply for a course in Coursera, and take those free courses first before you go do the online interview preparations. So that, basic course principles, computer science principles, and then coding practices online. The book is great. And then finally, one thing I would recommend is mock interviews, right? Mock interviews with someone you don't know. So you could, within your team, you could do a practice mock interviews, or even I recommend doing it with someone you don't know, because the interviewer will be someone you don't know. So there's actually a platform. Its name is skipping Pragma or something like that. There's actually a website where you can go and yeah, you could actually go and do an interview prep and a mock interview with someone. I actually did that when I was preparing for Databricks, and so that was really useful. So those are the things I would recommend, and I think most of you are already know what I said. So
thank you very much, Bemnet, because hearing it from another person definitely helps. Repetition increases the rate of things. Thanks for sharing your journey. And it's quite impressive that you got 3 offers out of 5 interviews. As you say, there is this unknown part of the interviews that you don't really know what the interviewer is looking for.
Especially in some
design questions.
they
They may have a design in mind, and what you
propose
propose can be very efficient, but different than what they have in mind. And that may not satisfy them. So there is always this uncertainty, even if the best of the best engineers can get rejection in the interviews. So, Bemnet, the next question I want to ask is more about life aspect of being in different cultures, different countries. So you've been to Ethiopia, Sweden, and United States for living, at least, right? Maybe more countries. So when you compare these different cultures with each other, what did you learn first of from living in different cultures, and what do you choose from each? Like if you want to make a package, bring the best out of them, what would you choose from where?
yeah, that's such a good question. Yeah, I guess I think my exposure from different cultures actually starts in Baghdad University, because when I went there, a lot of students came from many different part of the country that I didn't know, and so being able to hang out with friends from different backgrounds started for me as a student in Baghdad University. And I think the thing that stood out for me was having open mind. Not everything the way you thought is going to be the way other people will perceive it, right? So when you meet someone else from a different culture, their value system is going to be different, right? So being able to have an open mind to say and be able to accept people for who they are is one thing I learned very early on. After I went to Sweden, I actually had friends from Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Taiwan, Vietnam, India, and Ukraine, I think, and Greece, actually. So we had a group of people from many different places, and we used to have Friday cookouts. Like every week, we will go to someone's house and study there in their house, eating their food, right? And so being able to expose yourself to many different cultures is great. What your question was around, what type of things did you take from different cultures? In Sweden, the native people that live there is very respectful and very mindful of your actions and how you affect other people, right? So in taxi, someone could sit on you, like, there's no personal space. We tend to talk loudly. We tend to have a very interactive culture. And even if you don't know that person, you could start a conversation out of nowhere. Like that's something I actually miss when I went to Sweden. But then in Sweden, everybody has their own personal space. In respect people for who they are. I was an immigrant with a different skin color in Sweden, and I didn't feel discriminated at all there. So, being able to see someone and be able to respect their personal who they are was something that was very interesting. In the US, when I went internship there, the thing that shocked me was everybody talks to everybody the same way we do in Ethiopia. Like in the bus, the driver was asking me all about who I am, where I'm coming from, and after 2 years of being isolated from my culture, when I went to USA, like I was like, oh, am I in Addis or am I in US? And so I think being able to take the good parts from every culture and be able to take notice of things that would help you is great. I tend to be a very optimistic person. I tend to forget a lot of the pessimistic things. If someone calls me a bad name in the US because I'm Black, I would probably forget it in the next half an hour. Like I tend to ignore such bad exposures and try to keep the good ones, because that's how I believe. Like being a optimistic person, I think, is a better way to go. And everywhere I go, I try to see and have those things as a memory with me. I don't know if I answered your question, but just.
Oh, you did, and thank you very much. So the next question: what are some practices you would recommend that we should apply while working on a software project as teams?
So when you say teams, I heard you say teams for the group of students that are here as well. So what is that? Are they students working in a class project, or like what kind of setup are we talking about?
So currently we have 3 teams, 3 groups that are working on 3 separate projects. And each group roughly consists of 25 to 35 people. And under these teams, there are sub-teams. And for each project, we have product management, UI, UX, backend, mobile, and web teams. This is the structure.
I see. And they work on projects that they initiate themselves, or is it from school, or is it something you provide them, or how does that work?
So we source ideas as a team. Students, editors, everyone, like heads of education, everyone submitted the ideas, and the product management improved these ideas, and they filtered based on the criteria they had. And among the ones that are looking most promising, the teams have chosen their own ideas.
I see. Yeah, that's good. So the question was, what kind of practices could we follow when working on software projects? I think there are a couple of things. Some of them are personal, some of them are technical. Right. So in terms of the personal skills, I think a great skill to develop is communication skill. Right. One of the challenges I had struggled with is that when I went to work at Microsoft for the first time, I felt like asking someone for help was a bad thing. Like I thought someone would say, "Hey, we hired this person. He has no idea what he's doing. He's asking all these questions." Like I thought that was the stick that was what I would face. And so being able to distance yourself from that kind of feeling, being able to ask questions, be a very collaborative and communicative person is a great skill to develop. Within that, there could be things about like understanding your role clearly, like what are you responsible for? If you're a program manager, you have to be good at communicating, documenting your ideas, to be able to communicate your product vision and roadmap, not just verbally, but with a written skill as well, right? So that's one of the things we look from a PM is that you have to be really good at communicating your ideas, making sure that people understand, and not only one-way communication, right? So when you are given feedback, when someone, or maybe one of the developers say this is hard to implement, we don't have time to complete this project, you have to be able to take that feedback and make sure you react to that feedback, right? So communication skill is not just about you talking, but it's also listening, right? So this is one skill you could focus on. The other thing is understanding your role clearly, because most of the time the disagreements, or most of the time the reason projects fail and don't succeed is because maybe someone didn't have a good understanding what their role is. And so if I'm a software engineer and I am responsible for completing some part of the project, I should be able to understand what my duties are and what is the scope, like what is my expectation. And this is a skill that will help you even when you work in a big software company, because if you have a good understanding of what you're responsible for, it's easier for you to grow in your career ladder, because you could ask your boss, this is what I'm working on right now, and how can I grow myself? How can I increase my scope, right? Those are the things you could have a discussion with your boss. So those are the two communication skills, and understanding the roles clearly, I would recommend from like in soft skills perspective. From technical skill point of view, like I said, I think being able to get the fundamentals of computer science. Like back then, when I was, in your spot, most of the things I used to do were not driven by principles. It was because the way things were done. Like this is how you write applications. This is how you write a web app using ASP.NET. And so the focus I had was so much on the how, not the why, right? Being able to ask the why questions when you work on different projects. Why do we use this framework? Why do we choose to develop this way, not this way, right? So those are the, being able to understand and go to the first principles of, getting to the root of why you do things is a great technical skill to have, and it's going to help you grow. And yeah, I think those are the things I will focus on as you work in the team.
Well, thank you very much, Bemnet. As you say, there are some soft skills as well as some
Well, thank you very much, Bemnet. As you say, soft skills as well as some technical skills to build on, and communication skills are very important, as well as following the principles, the important question of why in things we do. Thank you. So next question, like, how often are you solving algorithms questions? Let's say when you're not interviewing.
Do you still solve algorithm problems?
Do you?
You're breaking up.
I think I lost. I didn't hear that. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
So when you're not interviewing, like let's say now, like do you also solve algorithms questions?
Like
once a month or how often? Yeah.
Honestly, no. No, in the sense of like I don't go to lead code and practice coding interviews. Like I don't do that. But what I do is I learn different technologies. Like I work mainly on a backend stuff. Like I don't get to develop a mobile app or a web app. And so what I do, and I don't work on AI and machine learning. So what I do is in my spare time, I develop these applications. Like I just finished developing this Amharic voice translator app I talked about. And so that's what I do is like I work on different technology stacks and I learn different aspects of things I don't work with. But I don't regularly go and do a coding interview. I guess when I am gonna go change a code, what I do is I do interview people too. I do 2 to 3 interviews a week, and so when I do interview people, I do go look at some of the questions and try to solve them, but not just for myself. No, I don't do that.
So another question from one of our teammates, Yop, and he's curious if you were in our shoes and you wanted to be an entrepreneur in Ethiopia now, would you stay in Ethiopia or would you go abroad, get experience, and do what you are doing now?
Yop, this is a hard one. I want to be an entrepreneur. I think there are a few things. Well, I think being abroad has few benefits, but also some downsides. For me, entrepreneurship is about two things, right? One is capital. You need to have some capital to start and get your ideas off the floor, and you need to have, right? You need to have the inspiration and the kind of problem solving. And I guess the third thing could be the connections and the network. And so for me, if I want to be an entrepreneur, I would like to solve a challenge that are within my country. This is where I grew up, and if I'm going to give back something, giving back to where I grew up would be what I would like to do. But the two things that would be missing would be the capital and the network, right? And so it would be, I think it would be harder for me if I didn't have the capital and didn't have the network to just stay here and continue what I do. So if I had the opportunity like I do now, what I will do and I plan to do in the future is be able to that I want to bring back to Ethiopia, and also bring back the network. I have access to a lot of engineers that work in the industry back in Seattle and USA, and also the capital, save some money, and bring those three things back to here to work on my entrepreneurship idea. I am not a great entrepreneur, so that would be also another thing I would like to develop. But to answer your question, I think if I had the opportunity, being abroad would have given me those two things: the capital and the network.
Thank you. And these two are also very essential for success in any real journey. Next, we would like to talk about habits. So with your life experience, which good habits you would recommend us to adopt, and which bad habits you would recommend us to stay from? And why?
These are hard questions. I guess one good habit is to focus on your goal. Like, I think I have a habit of committing to something and making sure that that thing gets completed. It really annoys me if I start a project and it doesn't get completed. It really annoys me. It really bugs me. I feel like it's a wasted resource. So that's one of the things I try to do. I don't try to commit. A lot of people come to me and say, "Hey, could we work on together with this idea?" Like, there was a doctor I talked to a few weeks ago, and he had some idea on how we could develop some mobile apps to help, bring some digital health technology to Ethiopia. And he asked me to partner with him. I honestly could not commit right away. I could say, yes, let's work on it right away. Me, I work 8 hours a day. I have 4 kids, so I have the 8 hours given to them, and the last 8 hour is going to be for me to sleep. So that 8 hours for my kids to split somehow for me to work on this other project, right? So being able to really be realistic about your time commitments and making sure that you only do things that you think would help you get to your goals is one habit. I think I would say we practice from just my experience. Things to avoid would be, I don't know, distractions. I don't know, like, don't waste your time, I guess. What you guys are doing here is great. Like, you have a team, you work on projects, you have a lead and a mentor, and so those are great things.
Thank you very much, Bemnet. Thanks for your time and sincere answers. And now we can switch roles, and if you have any questions for our or myself, we would love to answer.
That's great. I think one of the things I am curious is what is the goal of these three groups? Like, I understand there are three groups, each of them have about 25 people, so close to 50, 75 people in total. These students are here, and they are mostly from Addis Ababa University, from what I heard, right? So once you guys finish this project and you start working on your interview preparation, what is your aspirations? What is some of the things you're looking for? The reason I ask is I'm trying to see how I can help, right? What are the things I could do to help this group? And I'm just curious, what is the goal of this group? How are you guys going to move forward? Yeah, those kinds.
Thank you, Bemnet. So let me give you the overview of the story of A2SV with the groups. Then the picture is going to be more complete. So we started in November 2019 with the first group. And in the first group, we had 22 students. And next year, in 2020, we had COVID. It was the first hit. And by the end of the year, we were able to start with the second group. And since we didn't have a regular academic calendar at that time, second group and first group bonded really well after having a few camps together. And we had our first, not first group or second group, but group 12. So it was one big group now with around 30 people from second group and 22 people from first group. Then in the next education season, so December 2021, we get the third year of or third round of education. So this time we also started a partnership with Addis Ababa Science and Technology University. And then we trained one group in Addis Ababa Science and Technology University and two groups in Addis Ababa University. So those are the three groups that are currently in active education. And right now we are at the project and education phase. Since these are summer months, we wanted to have our project development phase during the time that the school is closed. And now, like we are at the middle of it, so there are 3 more weeks. By September 9, we are going to see MVPs on 3 different ideas. So Group 31 is building a digital library system in which university and high school students can share different resources with each other. And as a, let's say, second year software engineering student at Addis Ababa University Software Engineering Department, I can look for resources that were recommended by third year students who have just gone through this journey. And this can apply to other departments and other schools as well. That is the system they are trying to build on. And the second group is building micro Yelp. So this is an item-specific feedback system. At Yelp, for many years, we were reviewing restaurants, but we were actually eating the meals at the restaurants. So instead of giving a review for the burger place, we want to give the review for the burger. And like that's the main idea. Plus, it's not just about the food. Like the focus of this platform is feedback, valuable, useful, constructive feedback, through which different businesses, services, and products can get a better version of themselves. And the third group at A2SV is working on a laboratory system, so a software system which can be used by different types of medical labs. And these are very big ideas, and for that reason, the product team had to trim them down. And for the MVP, we are looking for the main flows, like not a feature product, but just a proof of concept, a functional proof of concept, which can be used to demonstrate to some investors and get some seed funding if needed. That can be one of the use cases. And these are going to be also the beginning for the future real world problem solutions we want to provide. And this phase is helping the team to get learning by doing experience. And after that, in September, after like 10 days of a break, we are going to have the camp. And during the camp, we focus on problem solving, data structures and algorithms mainly, as well as communication skills. So since these are mostly for the interviews, our main focus is on the verbal communication skills. But as you mentioned, to become an effective engineer, written communication skills are also extremely important. And hopefully in the future, this is also something we want to bring to our academy. And like in the groups, we have students from different years. First year, second year, third year, fourth year, graduating students, even graduated ones now can be in the same group. Therefore, we have people at different experience level. And this is the current picture.
Really, this is really great. Thank you for the overview. The follow-up question I had is, how closely do you work with the universities and the institutes? Is this program under the universities or managed by the universities, or is it on its own but assisted by the universities?
That's a good question. So we partner with the universities. We formed an NPO in California, and we do partnerships with the universities. So the program is in collaboration with the university. So we sign a memorandum of understanding and we make a project proposal. When it is accepted, we have official partnership.
I see. This is great. Okay, so now my last question is going to be, how can I help? Like, what is a way for me to contribute? I'm not saying I do have the time or the commitment, but if I was able to contribute myself or get someone else who would like to volunteer, what would that look like? What kind of help I can provide?
So I can mention a couple ideas, Bemnet, or like give you some information about the current state. So first off, opportunity. Currently, we are working with Databricks Amsterdam office, but we are not working with the US office. So if there is any interest in bringing new grads or interns from the continuing students, that can be a very good contribution. If there is any interest there, and if you connect the dots, we would be really glad to work with Databricks US as well. And we also build these projects. You can take a look, because at the beginning, everything is open source. I'm not sure, maybe this time we may have started with private repositories. But if there is any idea that sparks your attention, that you want to help with the development, we can definitely facilitate the environment, and you can have a very quick calls with the teammates, or have an access to the code base, and give reviews to the things to improve the quality. That can be another way of helping. And for the future, we are sourcing ideas from all the A2SV friends. And if you have some ideas that you would love to see being implemented by these brilliant students, you can also contribute us by providing ideas and guiding those ideas if those ideas are selected in the project selection phase. You can also guide us on that. So that's what comes to my mind. But if our teammates, if they can't think of anything else, team, please feel free to write to the chat window or unmute yourself and say. Yeah, looks like those are the ways.
Okay. And one last question is, what does A2SV stand for?
Africa to Silicon Valley.
Yes, cool. Nice name.
Thank you. And Bemnet, this was really nice meeting you. Thank you very much for your time. If you have any other questions or points, please feel free to send to me directly. And I'm also really looking forward to grab a lunch with you tomorrow.
Nice to see you guys. Thank you.
Have a great day. Bye.
Yeah, see you. Bye-bye.
You will lunch. You will lunch. Already, thank you very much. You know, lunch time. I think it went well.